Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Jean Oelwang on the line, and she is founding CEO of Planetary Guardians and Virgin Unite. And just to let everybody know, this is part of our Milken Global Conference series where we're bringing you the best of attendees, of guests, of panelists, of speakers from the Milken Global Conference, which took place in Beverly Hills, California. Jean, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Delighted to be here.
All right. So I got to get it kicked off with the Milken Global Conference. That's my Super Bowl, I like to say every year. I look forward to it every single year, going to it. And it's just one of my favorite times to go. And I mean, just like the content, the people, the networking, it's just a lot of fun. And the interviews, I do a ton of interviews for the conference. That being said, I know you were there. We didn't get to meet in person, but I'm sure happy that we get to do this episode together. So how was your experience?
Yeah, just like you, Adam. I mean, it was amazing. I love the team at Milken, Rich DeTizio, his whole team all the way through. And I guess a couple of things I found super interesting this year. One was just the focus on impact. And there was a lot of really interesting organizations from the business world, from the not-for-profit world. And bringing those two together was fantastic. And then just some super exciting things. Like I had an amazing organization with Peter Stavros from KKR, who's doing a lot with shared ownership across his portfolio of 30 companies. And yeah, just super exciting ideas.
Wow. Yeah, it was this. Now, have you been in the past, or was this your first time here? I'm just curious on if you've been in the past.
No, this was my first time. We've had no partnership with them, but yeah, no, I am a newbie.
How did you manage in your first time? Because I still remember my first time. I was overwhelmed. How did you manage?
Yeah, you're right, Adam. I remember walking and being like, oh, my God, there's so many people in one place. But it's fantastic once you figured it out. And, again, people are really welcoming and open and just lots of really beautiful conversations about interesting topics. I don't know about you, but I find when I go to something like that, you just come home and you're just on fire with ideas. And I felt certainly like that after. It was great.
I always like kind of popping in and out of stuff that I wouldn't maybe always in my day-to-day encounter as well, because it's like whatever panel, whatever room you get into, it's like there's going to be like an expert from that field, and it's vetted and it's interesting, and it's like I was kind of like popping around and in session to session, seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
So, Jean, I want to switch it up a bit here. Let's get into what you're doing over at Planetary Guardians and Virgin Unite. So, first off, I know you're a founding CEO. Talk about this project. How did it come to be?
Yeah, so we had the good fortune some 12 years ago now to meet this extraordinary scientist, Johan Rockström, who worked with about 28 other scientists around the world, and they came up with this framework called the Planetary Boundaries Science, which of course covers things like climate, but it gives you a holistic look at the planet. So it's biodiversity, it's land use, it's water, it's chemical pollution. And I guess we love it for a few reasons. One is it allows us to understand the whole health of the planet. So it's like a health check for the planet. The second thing is for entrepreneurs and business leaders, it allows us to prioritize investments and look at really interesting opportunities on how to pull ourselves back into a safe operating space. And lastly, it's a really interesting success story. Like, I've become obsessed with the amazing community that protected the ozone layer and saved all of our lives, literally. And I think the other reason we love it is it's just a high alert right now. It shows us that out of the 9 boundaries, we've already breached 6.
What does that mean? Let's go a little bit further into that, because I've read a little bit of the work and it's super interesting, first off, but I don't want to assume everybody understands what that means. So what does that mean?
Yeah, and I think in simple terms, for a business or for a government, it means we're at a very high point of risk of crossing a red high-risk line that will lead to potential catastrophic damage to life as we know it right now. And the good thing about the boundaries is, though, the scientists are clear that we still have a 5-year window right now to right the ship and turn. And if we use this framework and come together, a huge opportunity to create new business opportunities, to look at our existing businesses and see what we can change. For example, if you are a company that has supply chains all over the world, it gives you a chance to think about, okay, this is my carbon output on climate, but I'm also impacting biodiversity because I have my supply chain in, Indonesia or in the Congo that's having impact on one of the core, what they call the three basins, which is about, I think, 2/3 of our biodiversity in the world, and is almost like the engine of our life. So in some instances, what we're doing is building our companies and building our lives on the back of nature. And what we're not thinking about is that we're actually killing our life support system, and we're killing wonder for future generations.
Talk a little bit more about that 5-year, would you say window, or how do you come up with that?
So that's actually from Johan, the scientist that did the boundaries. And what they did this year for the first time, last year in 2024, is they unveiled this planetary health check that looked at pulling together all the boundaries to see where we sit on a high risk line. And we're very nearing that red high risk line. And they estimate that we have about 5 years to change course. And I think the beauty, again, of looking at a whole Earth approach is it's going to give us the best chance we have to also reach our climate goals. And so if we look at biodiversity, or if we look at nitrogen phosphorus runoff, which is mainly fertilizer that we use in the world right now, which then creates algae blooms, and the EPA in the United States said that fertilizer is one of the biggest risks to our water quality system. But yet, Adam, there's so many cool solutions that can solve that problem and help bring us back to a safe green operating space. There's really cool companies now that are coming up with nature-based fertilizers that still work, and they're healthier. And, they're also not there's something like 70,000 chemicals in the world that less than 1% are fully tested for human safety. And, University of New Mexico did a really interesting study last year where they found microplastics in 100% of the brains, testicles, and placentas that they studied. And they're starting to see that these are impacting human health. And I think that's a mistake we make as human beings, where we don't realize that the planet's health is actually our health.
That makes so much sense. And as I'm trying to wrap my head around even thinking about the entire planet and what it takes, what does a coalition even look like this? What a coalition this big, how do you even organize something like this? Who's part of it? It's big, obviously.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of strange, isn't it, that there's no place in the world right now to go and see all of the data for the health of our planet. When the planet really is, what keeps us alive, what is what we're building our companies on. And so one of the things that we're really excited to be working on with Johan is he's building this incredible collective of scientific organizations, but also incredible companies like Planet that does Earth observation to capture that data. Because there's a ton of data out there right now, and AI gives us an opportunity to pull that data, synthesize it, and bring it into one spot. So it's almost like a dashboard so we can understand our planet's health. And so we're working with Johan and hundreds of organizations on that. And then we've pulled together this incredible group of planetary guardians. There's about 19 of them now. And they're really interesting because they're a very diverse group across generation, across culture, across sector. But the one thing they have in common is that they've all committed their lives to the planet. And it's been amazing. Their mission really is to figure out how do we make this planetary boundaries framework a measurement and operating system for the world. So we've been working with industries to figure out how you embed it in your company, with governments to do the same thing, and then also thinking about how do we elevate that science and communicate it in a way that people will understand. And I think that's one of the mistakes we've made as humanity is we've made it so filled with jargon. We've made it so filled with fear. We've almost pushed people in a corner rather than opening up the space and thinking about how do we collaborate? How do we come together? And how do we actually create a future that we all want to run towards rather than one that's filled with fear?
Yeah, I completely get it. And where does this stand right now? Talk about what you're looking for, how people can participate. Who are you looking to participate in this initiative?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, our aim is to really make everyone everywhere a planetary guardian, to be proud to protect the planet. And we feel, again, that that's actually a better way of life than the one that we're headed towards right now. And if people want to check out the science and look at the health of our planet, they can go on to the Planetary Health Check website that we launched last year with Vic and Johan. And then we'd love also the Planetary Guardians website as well. We'd love to connect with partners and people that are doing work in this area so we can learn from them and collaborate with them. And I think people can do tons of stuff in their everyday life or in their companies. I mean, from a company perspective, this gives you a really interesting framework to understand your risks, understand where opportunities are, and also be more efficient and save money on the cost side. And we've created a model with an organization called Systemic that allows you to do that.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious. So obviously, a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of executives that listen to this show, and, there's ups and downs in different businesses, initiatives, nonprofits, coalitions. I mean, everything. I'm just curious, on your end, on a personal level, what keeps you hopeful in the face of like such a big and overwhelming challenge? Like, I'm wrapping my head around this right now, and I'm dealing with, I got to do some more podcast interviews over that. It's a little bit different than saving the whole planet. Like, what keeps you in the face of these challenges?
I would argue with you that I think podcasts do change the world in such a significant way, because that's where people are getting their information right now. So thank you for doing what you do. And I feel like, this framework helps me become grounded so it doesn't become so overwhelming. So you know exactly where you stand by boundary, and you know exactly what you need to fix. But I think the thing that has driven me and made me very hopeful over the last 10 years is I've had the amazing opportunity to sit at the feet of the humble community that really protected the ozone layer. And this is amazing people from all over the world who have committed, many of them their lives since some of them 1974, 1987. And just watching how they've worked with and created this, intoxicating purpose of getting the whole world to come together. And we did it then. That's an example of when we came together to protect the ozone layer. And then how they just systematically, they didn't push people in corners. They didn't divide. What they did is they bridged, and they brought companies together with, environmentalists, with governments, and figured out how we could create the Montreal Protocol at the time, which 197 countries signed, that helped us have clear goals on when we needed to phase out CFCs, how we would do it. And so I think, Adam, like for me, it's all about figuring out how we collaborate at a scale we can't even begin to imagine yet, but begin with that kind of clear focus on what needs to change and how we need to change it. And I think the ozone community, for me, is a beacon of hope that we can do it again.
That's awesome. Well, Jean, this has been great having you on the show today and learning more about your initiative. And final question, how do people connect? How do they learn more? How do they follow up?
Yeah, welcome people to go to the Planetary Guardians website that's out there, Planetary Health Check website. And again, we really open our arms to as many partners as we can bring into the tent now. So would love to hear from people on ideas, on ways they think we can simplify the communication, but most importantly, how we can really build this highly distributed community around the world to help make sure that we get back into that safe operating space and make sure that we don't kill wonder for future generations, and that we leave them a world that we have been so blessed to experience and live in.
Amazing. For everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put some links in the show notes so you can just click on them and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Jean, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me, and thanks for what you do.